Hey everybody, I hope that you were able to make it to this very first live Facebook thingy. A real technical term for this. I am going to be recording this for anybody who missed it, mainly because I think some people might miss it just because they probably went to my CJ and Aya page because I assume that's where I could do this since this is my first time. I'm a little confused as to how to make this work, but I'm gonna get there, and then the more often I do this, the better prepared I'll be and the better direction I'll give you. So hopefully you made it from my author page over to my own personal profile page. Welcome everybody, and for any of you who already know me pretty well, some of these questions that I'm gonna be answering, it may be boring for you, but please feel free to join in the conversation. Write your own questions if you want to. I've actually collected quite a few questions from many of you on my mailing list through emails, and so I'm super excited to answer those questions. I have a few, but if you want to add more, I'd be happy to answer them. You can add them in the comments. Whatever you want to do is fine. So this is just something fun. I wanted to get started because I'd really like to connect with everybody who reads my books, anybody who has any questions about kind of behind the scenes stuff. So I'm excited to talk to you guys and interact with you. Okay, so the first question that I got in an email, this was from Claire, and she asked me, is your husband the inspiration for some of the men in your books? And the answer to that is yes, for one very specific man. When I wrote Marry Your Billionaire, I needed to have a man who was going to be very specific about what he wanted. And when I think about someone who knows what he wants and then goes after it, I always think of my husband. Because when we first met, he was very clear about how he felt about me and where he wanted our relationship to go. And I was very not used to that because I was more used to dating people who didn't like to define the relationship and who like to call it hanging out. I think a lot of you can feel my pain on that. And so that was a little frustrating. And so when Joe came around, it was a breath of fresh air because he said, hey, you're really, I would love to go on a date with you. And he labeled it date right away. For those of you who have joined, I just want to make sure that you can actually hear me before I keep going on. So if you could just write down in the comments section that you can hear me, let me know, because I would hate to be talking and to have nobody hear what I'm saying. Since this is the first time I've ever done this, that would be kind of weird. So make sure that you type in there that you can hear me so that I know, and I can always, slow down if I'm talking too fast as well. So yeah, just let me know. Oh good, you can hear me. Thank you, Bobby Jean, I appreciate it. Okay, love you, BJ. I'm really excited you're here, by the way. I miss you so much, Rumi, miss you so much. Okay, so basically Joe told me that that he wanted to go on a date, and I was very used to guys just saying, hey, let's hang out, and so that, piqued my interest. And then probably about the second date, and this is actually very funny because I was rooming with the fabulous Carly Flake, and the next day after our date, which went really well, he came by, and we weren't there, but he left a note and said, hey, come over. I would love to spend some more time with you. And I was very hesitant. I just thought, oh, this is not really what I want to do. I don't want to start anything. I just, at the time I hadn't been feeling very well. I'd been a little bit ill. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to do that. And my roommate, she was like, this is a great guy. And she shoved me out the door and locked the door. She wouldn't let me back in. And she's like, don't come back until you've been kissed. So that was pretty funny. So I did end up going over to see Joe. We did hang out, though he labeled it a date, and then that day he was very clear about wanting to date, just exclusively after that second date, which was very fast, but it was also nice to have that clarity, to have someone just say, hey, I'm interested in you, I want to date you. And so we did, and that is really how it progressed. When Joe felt something a certain way, he would let me know. He wanted to know where I was with that. And then, he would pursue it. And at the time I was really ill, and I did not think that I had much longer to live. And so I was very upfront with him about where I was at, and that I thought it would be better to not continue. And for him, he said it wasn't a deal breaker, bless his heart. He was such a good guy. So he was like, yeah, you're going to be fine. We're going to figure it out. And I want to marry you. And I was like, alrighty then. So Brody in Marry Your Billionaire is really based off of Joe, and how persistent and honest and sincere he was, just very clear about what he wanted and going after it and communicating that. And then Joe is also very romantic, and so is Brody in Marry Your Billionaire. And Joe is also very kind and considerate, as is Brody. So yes, he's the character that I think out of all of the male heroes, the heroes in my books, that Joe most emulates. So that was a good question. For any of you newcomers, if you have any more questions, feel free to type them in. I'll be happy to answer them. I'm just going to go down the list of questions that I got in emails. Okay, the next question is, why did you deviate from YA urban fantasy to write Marry Your Billionaire? And that is also kind of funny. It's interesting when inspiration hits. It can come from anywhere, and I love getting really fun ideas for things. But this actually happened while watching The Bachelor. We had a foreign exchange student from Switzerland living with us at the time. And I had stayed away from The Bachelor for years. I'd never watched it. I never wanted to. I thought it was ridiculous. I did not think that was a great way to find love. And she was like, let's watch The Bachelor. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. Let's not do that. And she said, we're totally watching it. And so I sat down with my 17-year-old foreign exchange student. We started watching The Bachelor, and I was so hooked. It was redonkulous. I was so infatuated with it and the process. It was ridiculous, but it was so entertaining. And as I was watching it, I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, it would be so funny if like one of the contestants on the show just didn't really want to be there, but just had a compelling reason to be there. And then it would be hilarious if she needed to get off, but the Bachelor wouldn't let her, And so that's kind of how Marry Your Billionaire came about. And I really needed to write the 4th book in the Healer series, but I couldn't get this idea out of my head. And so that's why Marry Your Billionaire happened. So I tend to write urban fantasy, but I kind of went off course there and did a romantic comedy that had a little romantic suspense in it, just because I really love those books too. And I just decided to try my hand at that. I think that probably I will delve into a lot of different genres because I enjoy reading a lot of different genres. So it's very fun for me to do that. And Marry Your Billionaire was a little bit different than what I normally write, but it was so much fun to write. Okay, question number 3. What books inspired you at a young age? Funnily enough, and you would think that I would write in this genre only since it inspired me so much, I started reading Nancy Drew books. I was very obsessed with mystery books and with the idea that women could, be investigative reporters or detectives. It just was very empowering to me. And so at a very young age, because I had a very hard time introducing myself to other people, and I was not very social, and I got bullied a lot when I was very young, it was easier for me to delve into books and to kind of escape that way. And so I really, really enjoyed reading Nancy Drew mysteries. And I read them all the time, and I actually preferred reading to people. And I think that in a lot of ways I still do. I have a lot of social anxiety. It's very hard for me to introduce myself to people. A lot of people think I'm an extrovert, but that's just because I forced myself to do a lot of things because it bothered me to think that I had weaknesses in those areas, and I didn't want that to stop me from doing things that I love to do. But really what I wanted most was to just sit in my room and read Nancy Drew books. And so as I read those, it occurred to me that women could do anything, really. And I knew that, and my parents had always pushed me to pursue my dreams and to do what I wanted to do. But it led me to other books, like the Anne Frank, Diary of Anne Frank. That was really intriguing to me when I read her story, and I started reading books written by Mary Higgins Clark. And she, broached she broached difficult subjects that were hard to talk about. And then I continued to read classics, just Pride and Prejudice, all of these books that showcased a lot of strong, independent women. And I loved that. And I thought it was great to study the way that they were writing and to think outside the box a little bit. And it was my form of escape. So those early books really inspired me. And because I love mysteries so much, I really have kind of wanted to study how to write them. And I think that's kind of what I want to do with Angie's story. For any of you newcomers, I'm answering questions. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm trying to figure out how to look at everybody's comments and stuff. So if I miss a question, I apologize. I'm still trying to figure this out since this is the first time I've done this. So the Healer series has a character named Angie, for anyone who hasn't read the Healer series, and she's very fun. And she was inspired by a good friend of mine named Jennifer Earle, who is snarky and funny and loyal, and I love her immensely. And so I really think that because of Angie's gifts and because of how many people really resonated with that character, I wanted to do a shoot-off series. And I want it to be a mystery series. So that is coming up eventually, and I'm excited to kind of delve into the world of mystery and look into that. So that's going to be super duper exciting. Okay, question number 4. You mentioned that you were a singer and a songwriter before you started writing novels. Would you tell us more about that? I will. I spent most of my life in elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, singing and dancing and performing. It was not something I was comfortable with, and not a lot of people know this, but it scared me to death to get on a stage, and that bothered me. It really bothered me to be afraid of things. And so I would have horrible panic attacks before I would go perform on stage, and to the point where I would be throwing up. But I kept doing it because I wanted to get over this huge fear that I had of it, and because I love to sing and dance and perform so much. And so I just kept pushing and pushing, and eventually once I got into college, it became much easier, and I had a little more confidence in my abilities, and I also took some voice lessons to help me once I got into college to conquer that a little bit more. When I hit college, when I was 19, there was a contest for songwriting, and my mom told me about it, and so I entered it, sent a song in, and I ended up being picked as one of the top 10. They put it on a CD, and we got to tour around the United States. We got to sing at different places. It was really exciting, and from there, I met a producer who helped me produce a CD of songs that I had written. Now, I had never taken any classes, which would have been good. And so I'd never really learned the art of writing songs. I just based what I had heard and mimicked other people and the way that they crafted verses or bridges or choruses, and that's how I put it all together. And so it's not a horrible CD, but it's obviously not pop or mainstream. It's not current if you wanted to really put it up with Christina or anything like that. And some of the songs are religious. There's a country song in there. There's, a bunch of different songs. There's a jazz song that's kind of bluesy. And it was done when I was 19. And as I got older and really considered the possibility, just because of different producers that I had met and different people I had met, there was the opportunity to write for other singers, and there were other opportunities to write for myself, possibly sign with someone. And I just kept looking at that industry, and I knew that I could not do it. I knew that where I was at, it wasn't for me. I was thinking about serving a mission for my church. I was considering the logistics of it, and I wasn't looking at it with a blind eye. I knew based on other things that I had heard about the industry that it was very hard to get into. And not only that, but you make a lot of sacrifices that you may not want to. And the idea of going indie with that was very interesting because you wouldn't have had to sign with a label. But when I considered singing on a consistent basis and performing on a consistent basis, I just realized that singing for me is a hobby and nothing more. I love to sing. I love to perform. I love to share music with people. But to do concerts and to constantly be on, I couldn't handle it, especially because I've never fully conquered my fear of being on stage in front of people. And I knew that was just so exhausting. And when I considered it, I just thought, at the end of the day, that's really going to be a chore. At the end of the day, I'm going to resent it, and I'm not going to want to do it. So I just kept writing music and singing for me. And I like to perform and do things locally. I've been offered payment. I don't like that because I think it's better just to go and have fun and sing and enjoy just being a part of the local charities and functions. And also because a lot of times they can't afford that. And it's better to just be a part of it and to volunteer, I think. It's fun that way. So I don't sing often. But I am still writing songs. I like to write songs for my books. One of these days I have it in my head that if my books ever become, a movie, then I've already got the soundtrack written, baby. It's all done. They can totally use my song. They probably wouldn't use my singing, but maybe they'd use the song. So that's kind of where that came from. Now, the switch from being a singer and a songwriter over to being a novelist actually happened when I was signing CDs at a store. And one of my friends was signing her books, and I had read her books, and for some reason I hadn't put together that she was the author, and I don't know why, but we were sitting there and she was signing them, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've read like 5 of your books. I love them. How do you even do that? I assumed that you had to have a master's degree in English. And she said, no, you don't have to have a degree in English. If you love to write, and she said, and you write songs, so you love to write, why don't you just join my writing group and we'll get you started there. So I did. I think I was like 27 or 28. And so I went to the first writing class that they had, and I had a great idea, and I started writing it, and that eventually became The Healer. Now, I really stunk at the beginning. I didn't understand the fundamentals of writing. I didn't know how to structure a scene. I didn't know how to separate points of view. I would have the character speaking, and we would see the scene from like one character's perspective and then a different character's perspective all at the same time. So I was doing a lot of head jumping within scenes, and I didn't realize that wasn't correct. And so as I was slowly going through and learning this process, it was so appealing to me. And I had kind of dabbled with writing stories before. I would write stories for friends at Christmas time, and they were probably terrible, but I loved doing it. It was fun, and I would give them away as gifts. So even though I'd never considered that it was possible for me to do it, I realized that I had kind of always loved to write. Whether it was a story that I was creating in verse, or whether it was just something that I was doing very badly on my own and didn't realize it. It was so nice to join this critique group because they were able to tell me what I was doing wrong and how to fix it. And they did it in a very loving way. They did it in a way where it was like, this is working and this is good, but this is why you can't do it this way. And so I would fix it and I would move on. And it was very frightening at first to have what I was working on looked at and analyzed and criticized by others. And you're just so afraid to leave yourself vulnerable, because you don't know what they're going to think. And this is your stuff that you're writing, and it's so scary, but it was so exhilarating to have people say, that's good. Now do this way. And so my learning process was really enjoyable. And pretty soon I was really craving that constructive criticism. I was really craving being told what was wrong with it. I'd get into those group meetings once a month, and I'd sit there and I'd go, all right, tell me what's wrong. What do I need to fix? I was really excited about it. You can't have an ego going into it. You need to be open to learning. And so that's kind of where that all came about, that transition. And Claire just commented, she said, just finished my Fair Assassin and Traitor, and there's a little heart there. Oh, thanks, Claire. I appreciate it so much. Okay, question number 5. Have you always self-published your books? The answer to that is no. I first started out traditionally published. I was querying people. I was sending into publishers. I didn't understand the industry. And so I was published by a company called Boku. And I really, really love my publisher. And I loved the people I worked with, the cover designer, the editor. It was a big morale boost for me because it made me feel a little vindicated, like maybe I had some talent. Maybe somebody was gonna want to read my book someday. And so it was really wonderful. But as I continued with them, and I had signed a contract for 3 years with them, But as we continued on, I realized that I have a very type A personality. I like control. And I like to know what's happening, and I like to be a part of things and in charge of things. And so I started studying marketing, and I started to realize that there was just so much more we could do, but it wasn't happening. And a lot of that has to do with small presses not having the budget for it, or not even having a marketing department. And so some of the things that I wanted to do and implement, I couldn't do it from my end because I didn't have the control. And a few suggestions I made, it's not that they weren't well received, it's just that they did not necessarily get implemented due to costs and due to time restraints and things like that. And so I was just kind of continued to study, continued to learn what I needed to, and realized that self-publishing was really what I wanted to do. And so I was kind of waiting to get my rights back so that I could have full control of the process. And what happened was I ended up getting my rights back much earlier, and that was in February of 2016, I think. And then in March, I published the 3 books that I had. It was The Healer, The Black Blossom, The Grasscutter Sword. I got those babies up there in 1 month, and I just applied everything that I learned. And for the next three or 4 months, The Healer was an Amazon bestseller because I implemented all of the strategies that I had learned. So that was empowering. That was so exciting to think that what I was learning was working. I was just so excited about that. And to think that people were enjoying what I was writing, and they were getting some of the main themes that were in there. I got a lot of emails from people who were ill and were suffering from chronic illness or pain. And they would talk about how the books that I had written had helped them escape from it a little bit, had given them ideas about energy healing. I thought that was great. And so it was really exciting to see that what I was writing was resonating. And it wasn't perfect at first, and I knew that. I knew that The Healer was really rough in the beginning. Even when I published it and I had an editor, I still hadn't had a lot of experience structuring novels very well. And for whatever reason, I thought I could handle a series. And so I actually ended up re-editing and changing quite a few scenes and fixing things probably a few months after I put The Healer up, because I wanted it to be the best possible product that people could have, and I wanted it to fit with the second and the third book much better, because I had added some things in The Black Blossom and The Grasscutter Sword that just didn't, it made the first book not make sense anymore. And I know that had a lot to do with me not understanding the outlining process as well as I do now. And so I was able to fix those things, and I tried to stay as true to the original story as possible, but I think it ended up working very well. And so I appreciated the constructive criticism that I got from fans, because they were very kind about some of the things that they said. Others weren't. You're always going to get trollers and people who will criticize you no matter what, and that is okay, because everybody, it's their opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm grateful for all the support that I've gotten so far from it. It was really, really amazing. And so even though I have some days where I sit there and I think to myself, I'm such a hack, there's no way that I can do this. Everybody thinks that I can write books, and maybe I can't really write books, especially on those days when I sit there and I'm staring at the computer and nothing is coming, and I'm like, I'm a fake, I'm a fraud, I can't do this. But then I get those emails from you guys telling me, how the books have helped you and what you've loved about them, and I think to myself, okay, I'm no Stephen King, I'm no Nora Jones or Nora Roberts or anything like that, but I'm making a difference, and there are people who are enjoying it. And I think for me that is really the goal. And then I just keep improving from there, trying to, you can never stop learning. And so I keep trying to learn as much as I can. And that was kind of a long way to explain if I started out as self-published or traditionally published. But I generally recommend for people to self-publish. And I always tell people, if they've been thinking about writing a book, they should. They absolutely should, because there's no reason, with the way publishing is available to everybody now, there's no reason to not publish. You absolutely can do that, and it's so satisfying. Even if you just want to do it as a hobby, or just do it to see if you can, it's really satisfying to finish something and then to put it up there and to think, oh my gosh, I did this. Like, that's amazing. It's the best feeling ever. And so the first time I did that, I think that I wasn't sure if I was going to do this as a career or not. I was really hesitant, but it felt so good to finish something like this. and to continue forward. And that's when I thought, okay, I've finally found my place in this world for me. This is exactly where I need to be, and this is exactly what I want to do. So that was really exciting. For you newcomers, I've had a lot of people that have been joining. If you want to ask me a question or put a comment in, go ahead. I'm trying to watch and see everybody's comments. I just keep seeing that people have joined. If I miss a comment, I'm so sorry. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to figure this out. This is the first time I've done this. So just ask a question if you want to, comment. I will try to respond, okay? Okay, how did you come up with your idea for My Fair Assassin? This was interesting because originally My Fair Assassin was just a 7,000 word short story. And I came up with the idea because I ended up collaborating with a bunch of different authors who wanted to do a Halloween anthology called Strange and Lovely. Rebecca put that together. She spearheaded the whole thing, and she's fabulous. I really enjoy her works. And so she said, would you write something? And I said, yeah, I'll think of something. And I didn't want to do vampires. I didn't want to do werewolves. Not that I wouldn't ever write something like that. But at the time, it was just such a saturated market and storyline. You know, Twilight was very recent. And I just thought, what could I do that would be really interesting? Hi, Kira. I love you too. I'm so glad you're here. And so I wanted to do something that would be a little different that I hadn't looked into. And I love studying mythology. And so I decided to study up on changelings, on fairies, just to see what that was all about. And I thought that it would be really interesting to incorporate a little bit of, I don't know, just a little bit of what teenagers deal with when it comes to identity crisis and trying to find yourself. Because being a teenager was so frustrating for me on so many levels. And I think that I've always operated under the motto of fake it till you make it. I did a lot of faking it in high school. But it was very frustrating because I never felt pretty enough. I never felt good enough. I never felt accepted or like I had a place where I could just say, yes, I've arrived. This is me. This is who I am. It took me so long to find myself, even after college. And so I just really wanted to reach out to teenagers, which was a weird desire to have in a 7,000 short story, 7,000 word short story in an anthology. But I just had this idea of this girl who was a fairy and just very different and not accepted by anybody. And she couldn't figure out why she couldn't find her place. And so I just wrote it really quick. It just flowed. It was great. It was fun. And it was so short, but it was just a scene with Jareth and Krista, slowly going over the fact that she was very different and her hating those differences. She didn't like her white hair. She didn't like her pointed ears. She didn't like the fact that she saw the world differently and responded to things differently. And Jareth was able to be the one who could accept her and point out why she was beautiful and point out why these unique differences that she had were so appealing, and they shouldn't be disregarded just because they're not like everybody else. And so I wanted to focus on those differences and to rejoice in them and to make it beautiful and to try to do all of this in 7,000 words. And so I don't know that I accomplished that originally, but it was a fun story and it did go in the anthology. And I remember my sister Haley reading it, and she called me and she said, "This isn't done." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "This is not done. There is so much more to this story. Like, I'm so mad at you for only writing 7,000 words. And I said, but that's all there is. Like, I really don't think that I'm going to write anything else. And she said, "Just think about it because it's not done." And then I received a lot of emails about that short story. And a lot of people were very dissatisfied that I had not done this. Oh, hi, Elder Mella. How are you? I remember you. Hi, Paulo. Thanks for being here. I'm so good, Paulo. It's good to see you. I'm so thrilled you're here. That's exciting. And so, sorry, I get sidetracked very easily, as you can tell. So what I did was I sat down finally after I had finished the prophecy and I could focus on it a little more. And I just thought there's a lot more to this that I need to do. And there are a lot of teenagers who need this. So I sat down and I took each paragraph and I started to stretch it out more. And then I started to add scenes and flesh it out more. And then I started to add more character and more banter and just to see where it took, where it went. And I thought that it would be the only book. I really did. But as I continued further, the more that I got into it, the more I realized that there really was a lot to tell, and that Krista had taken on a life of her own, and Jareth had too. There was just so much there. And I realized that there were a lot of issues that teenagers deal with that Krista was dealing with, that I had dealt with, and I needed to explore that. So I did. And each book I've thought, this is going to be it, and it hasn't been it. And even this third book that I finished, halfway through it, I sat there and I was like, crap, this is not going to be the last book. And I was so ready to move on to Angie's series, but it's not the last book. So I've just been helping her deal with issues of sexual abuse that a lot of teens deal with, that I dealt with. I wanted her to, and not for those things to be like the main focus, because it's still a fun story that needs to be uplifting, but there are these struggles that people go through, and it needs to be real, and it needs to be relatable, and it needs to be something that will help teenagers or even adults recognize in themselves and know that whether they are dealing with these insecurities or these problems or not, they still have an opportunity to overcome them, just as Krista is. This is a journey for everybody, and it was important for me to talk about it, and it was therapeutic for me to write it. And so Krista is a lot like me, I think, in that respect, and that's really how My Fair Assassin came to be. And so now I'm working on the fourth book, and I'm trying to get to this point where she is getting stronger and stronger and really forced to trust herself and believe in herself. And that has been exciting to watch, even though I've been like frustrated with trying to meet my goals this month because everything's been crazy. And I want to make sure that that focus is there, that this growth happens, and that character arc is there for everybody to see and to know, because it needs to be that moment where you overcome stuff. Everybody needs to know that that's possible. And so I'm trying to incorporate that into this series. And I really hope that it ends up being that way, because otherwise I'm just going to keep rewriting it until it gets there. But that is My Fair Assassin. If any of you have any more questions or anything, just chime in. I think I'm seeing some comments, so hopefully if I've missed your question, type it in again, okay? All right, so question number 7. Does a big ego help or hurt writers? It's only going to hurt you. I have run into several people who were traditionally published and they switched to self-publishing, and they have talked about how the indie community, the independent writers, self-published writers, how it's a very loving, open community where we share knowledge, we share success. It's not quite so closed. A lot of published authors traditionally said that a lot of secrets were kept close. There was a lot of competition. There wasn't a lot of help. And I don't know that is true for everyone's experience being traditionally published, because I have talked to some authors who are very happy with where they're at and how things are going. Excuse me. And they enjoy what's happening, and they also don't want to have anything to do with the marketing aspect. They just want to write and focus on that. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But when it comes to being a writer, especially being an indie author, it's so important to check your ego at the door. And I've said this over and over, no matter how much I learn, no matter how much I improve with my writing, there's never going to be a moment when I sit there and go, I've arrived. You know, like, I know everything there is to know about good writing. Nobody can teach me anything else. I'm the best at what I do. Like, that's never going to happen, because you can always learn something that's going to help you improve. There's always going to be some perspective that you hadn't seen before, some way to deliver an emotion or dialogue or to present a scene that's always going to be so great. And you can learn it by reading other authors' books. You can learn it by taking the critiques that they give you and not being, defensive about it. And sometimes there will be critiques that you'll hear and you'll think, I get what they're saying, but maybe that doesn't necessarily work for me. And so you have to gauge, what kind of critiques you need to implement and what is a great suggestion but isn't really something you want to implement. But you have to be willing to accept that, and you have to be willing to recognize that you can only get better if you listen to other people's suggestions. I have learned the most when I go to my critique groups and listen to what they have to say, because even though the story's in my head, that it doesn't mean that that it's coming across the way that I think it is. I need a lot of people to tell me what they think and how they feel about it. And if there are certain things that I've done and delivered in a certain way that are having a specific result, and when I get enough people telling me that, I pay attention, because that means that I am not communicating and I'm not writing things the way that I need to. My presentation is wrong. And so you've got to be willing to listen to those things. Also, you need to be willing to share. And you need to be willing to lift other people up, and you need to be willing to give praise where praise is deserved, and you need to be excited for other people's success, and never sit there and compare yourself to others, and never resent other people's success. Because in this industry, there's never going to be an end to reading. There are always going to be people who want to read books. And if people love urban fantasy, they're going to love this woman's book or this man's book, and that means they're going to love your book. They're going to want to continue reading in that genre. So there's no reason to be competitive or cutthroat or have that kind of an ego, because it just, I don't know, I believe in karma. And so I just feel like the more you give, the more value you bring to the table, the more you're uplifted as well. And so I just think that that's a better way to look at things. And it's much better to operate in that realm. You just make so many more friends that way. You have so many more rich experiences that way. And I think your writing grows because of it. So yeah, no ego. That's no good. That's no good. To the point where sometimes I think I'm a little too hard on myself. Authors have a lot of insecurities. It is hard every single time to publish a book, because I will finish it, I'll get it edited, and then I'll sit there and I'll think to myself, I am so nervous to publish this. What if people hate it? What if everybody hates it? And I remember sitting there and telling Joe that. I was like, I don't think I'm going to publish this. It was the fourth book. It was The Prophecy. I was like, I'm not going to publish this. I think I just need to throw it away and never write again. And Joe was like, okay, let's sit down and have a talk. Because Joe is kind of my meter of what is normal. Like, if I'm just like on the edge and I'm about ready to topple over it, like, he can bring me back and ground me, And so many times he has told me not to give up. Many times he's told me that I am good at what I'm doing, that I am learning, that I am growing, and that I need to keep going. And I think that people need to know that no matter where you're at and how much success you may have had before, there are always going to be moments where you feel a little insecure. And so it's important to believe in yourself. So take the ego out of it, but believe in what it is you're trying to accomplish, and get rid of any limiting beliefs that you may have about yourself. If this is what you want to do, if this is what you love to do, then you need to do it. For sure, no matter how insecure you feel about it. And I have those insecurities every day, and I talk to authors who do as well. They worry that they are hacks, that maybe they really don't know anything. And you know what? Maybe they don't. I knew nothing. I knew nothing going into this. I had so many technical issues with my books when I first started out that sometimes I thought, I think Jen had it wrong and maybe she shouldn't have invited me to this writing group. But it was really a wonderful growing experience, and I grew so much in my writing in that first year, and I've continued to grow. So I have found that you really have to balance that. No ego, but you also need to believe in yourself. And so it's difficult. I think everybody struggles with that, no matter what the profession is, no matter what you've chosen in life. You're always going to have moments where you doubt yourself and you doubt your abilities. And you just need to remember that the important thing is that you continue to learn, that you continue to grow and pursue what your dreams are, and that you don't give up because of what you're afraid of. Don't stop doing things if you're stopping because you're motivated by fear. That's never going to help you. And so I've always had to sit there and analyze whether I'm thinking about stopping or quitting because I'm afraid, or whether I just hate it. Because if you hate it, then don't do it. But it's usually fear. It's usually insecurities. It's usually not believing in myself. And so I have found that having people who love and support you and can help you remember that you have talent in whatever it is you're doing, that's very helpful in those moments where you have zero ego at all and no confidence whatsoever. So I think that as authors, we need that support group, and I've really appreciated the support I've gotten from all of the people in my newsletter. I've really appreciated the support from friends and family members, everybody on Facebook who comments lets me know that they have read the books. You may think that that is a little thing, just to write me a sentence and to say, hey, I love your books. Like Jessica Tyson, you just wrote, love your books, Cindy, you're amazing. Thank you. I mean, that is gold to me. And it took you 2 seconds to write it, and it's just made my day. So, don't ever doubt that when you send those things to me that I disregard them. I don't. I treasure all of them. I put them in my little fan mail inbox thing. I save that stuff, and I appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. Thank you, Sarah, for being here. I'm excited that you're here. Okay, so I have just like 2-3 more questions left, and if any of you have anything you want to comment or ask me about, you totally can. Okay, have you ever gotten reader's block? I thought this question was so funny. It wasn't writer's block, it was reader's block. I have gotten reader's block because as you learn how to structure books, things that you never would have picked up on as a reader before, you will pick up on as a writer. And so there have been a couple of times when I've started reviewing a book for just when I was blogging and reviewing books for people, there were a couple of times when I would get books where I could recognize that there was some plot issues, or there was story structure issues, or maybe there were issues with characters, and then I would have to stop. And because I'm the type of person who wants to help fix things, I wouldn't finish the books. I'd get so blocked, I'd sit there and go, okay, how can I help this person make this better? But how can I do it in a way that doesn't offend them? Because I didn't want to offend them, I wanted to help them. And so there were several times where I would just stop reading and I would contact the person who had asked me to review the book, and we'd go over different aspects of it that had kind of stopped me. And obviously they don't have to take my suggestions into consideration, because at the end of the day, you take and pick what's going to work. But I remember a book that I read where it was about a mother who had made some very bad choices in the beginning. And now she was back on track. She was becoming a medical examiner. So it was kind of a crime mystery novel. But it didn't start out with her being on track. It started out with her being a drug addict and losing her son as a result of inviting the wrong person into the house, and her son died. And it was such a horrible, the way it was presented was such a horrible turnoff, in the sense that as a mom, I was just like, why would you do that? And that's not to say that that's not real, because it is real and it does happen, and there are people who make mistakes, and that is relatable. But introducing that at the beginning turned me off to her character. So it was all stuff she could have kept in there. And so I contacted her and we discussed that. And I said, I think what you need to do is start her off with where she is now, and then maybe have flashbacks of those things that had happened. So you're hinting at backstory, and you're hinting at issues that occurred in the past, because we want to love this character. And as you have it written now, we can't love this character. Moms cannot love this character, not if you've thrown out the weaknesses first in the beginning. Like, people are going to be so turned off by this. And so we talked about her rearranging it and restructuring it a little bit. And I don't know if she did, but she was very receptive to it. And so that sometimes I do get reader's block, because I'm analyzing it from a writer's perspective, not to be critical or rude or to think, oh, I'm so much better, but just because I'm constantly trying to better my books. And so if I see possible flaws or issues in a book that might stop a reader from reading, and they may not know why they stopped, they just couldn't get into it. I don't want, a person's success to stop because of that. Like, I want someone to point out to me the flaws that are that's in my writing. That needs to happen, otherwise I can't get better. I just can't. So if nobody tells me, I can't fix it. And so I'm just like, what if I don't tell this person, and then they don't fix it, and they just keep having problems and they don't know why? And so that happens a lot. And it got to the point where I was like, I can't review books anymore. I just don't have time to continue to coach people on the things that I've learned, because a lot of these people had never taken writing courses. They didn't know some of these things. And I just didn't have time to coach every single person, even though I actually really love doing that. I love teaching people how to write books. That's so much fun for me. And I'm actually creating an online course to do that, so that I can better serve people but not spend so much time on one person. If I have a course, then I can help a lot of people all at once. It'll be there. And so that did happen a lot. And I see June. Oh, June just joined. She's one of our our first foreign exchange student from Thailand. Hi, June. It's so good to see you here. That's exciting. Yay, June. Okay, so next question. What was an early experience where you learned that language had power? I really love this. And this this had a lot to do with with one of the books that I had mentioned before, The Diary of Anne Frank. I remember reading that book in school and going home and just sobbing. I was so saddened, just learning about that history between, the Jews and the Holocaust and everything like that. And it was the first time where I realized that issues could be explored, that there are things that have happened in this world and mistakes that have been made, and certain perspectives and viewpoints that shouldn't be accepted. We need to speak out against racism. We need to speak out against bullying. We need to speak out against others who are going to hate on people. Like, we can't turn a blind eye to that. And I think that was a really big moment for me in I think it was junior high that I read that, junior high or high school, but I just sat there thinking, words are so powerful because they shed light on a lot of issues that people would rather just, sweep under the rug. And so that is something that I have tried to do in my writing. The Healer focuses very heavily on choice versus destiny, on what your choices are going to do and how they're going to direct the course of your life, on consequences that occur based on the choices you've made. And do choices really matter? Or are we just foreordained and predestined to be a certain way? I know that some people believe that choices don't matter. And so I just want to open that up, and I want discussions, and I want people to think about it, because I really loved those books that made me think, that made me ponder about things that I had never thought about before, that made me think about issues that maybe I had seen in one way, and suddenly I could see it from another person's perspective. And I think that's so important to not just see it from one way, but to see it from another way. I think it builds tolerance. I think it helps people accept one another better. So words are so powerful in that respect. And The Diary of Anne Frank, that was a huge one for me, and I've always remembered that. And so I do love to read books that make me think about that. So very good question. Thank you for that. Okay. Last question that I have here, and then if anybody else has anything, then you can for sure write or comment. I've been talking nonstop for like 50 minutes. I need some water. Okay, so how many unpublished and half-finished books do you have? I actually have a couple of books, just a couple of books that are outlined, a couple of romances that I would like to get to, and I know that I could whip out really quickly, but because I'm so focused on other books, I can't split my focus on that. However, there is one book that I had an idea for, and this was during the time when I was pursuing a traditionally published career, and I was at a writing conference, and I was pitching an idea to was it the publishing director? And I'm going to get the name wrong because he changed and went up even higher. But I was pitching to someone at Deseret Book, and I had pitched The Healer to him, and he seemed mildly interested, but it really wasn't his thing. YA urban fantasy, he wasn't interested in that. He's like, what else do you got? And I was like, well, I have this idea, but I haven't written it at all. He's like, well, let's hear it. And so I told him about an idea I had for a religious community where these churches were kind of vying for supremacy as far as who had the best choir. I just thought it would be funny. And just kind of these quaint, small town, quirky characters. And one church has one choir that's always winning the trophy, the choir competitions, and this other kind of underdog choir with just these weird, crazy characters that obviously everyone's very socially awkward. You've got, the general who was in the Marines and is constantly barking orders and doesn't know how to talk to people unless he's commanding them. And then, you've got someone who who thinks she's an opera singer and sings that way in the choir and cannot, just tone it down a bit. And then you've got, twins, and then someone who also thinks that he is in charge of everything. There were just a lot of fun characters that I wanted to explore, and they just never could win this trophy ever. And so I called it Ward Choir Wars. And so I presented that idea to him. And he thought it was so funny, and I was really surprised. And he said, "So you haven't written it yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't written it. I just thought it'd be funny." And he said, "I want you to write it. I want you to write up a synopsis and write up a whole outline of it, write a few chapters, and send it to me." And so I did. And he sent it back to me when I was finished. He said, "This is hilarious. I want you to write it." And so this was about the time that I got pregnant. And for any of you ladies, like, that when you get pregnant and your hormones hit and you are just dying, like, I could not focus. I couldn't focus or function on this book because I was throwing up constantly. And so now I wasn't able to finish it, and I have this aversion to this book now, even though I love the characters and I love the storyline, and I really, really want to write it and get it done because it's halfway done. I've got 60,000 words written, but because I could not get through the morning sickness process, like, every time I think about that book, I think, oh, vomit, I can't do it, not right now. So I'm still waiting until that association with that book goes away. But eventually I really would like to finish it because I think it would be a really funny comedy that does have some light romance in it. There is like a romance theme in there of the choir director who comes in, and she gets landed with this, choir that's just so funny and weird and quirky. And she is not necessarily sure that she even wants to be a part of religion or she believes in God or anything like that. She's having this weird crisis of faith and having to deal with all of these weird characters and their, zealous interest in winning this choir competition. So I think it will be fun to explore and to continue on once I can finally get to the point where I can look at that manuscript and not associate it with morning sickness. I know that's so weird, but eventually I'll get to it. And then Melody, hi, how are you? I remember the bookstore too. Yeah, I so remember that. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for commenting. So that's pretty much all the questions that I got emailed. So I hope I answered everything. I wanted to connect with everyone, wanted to thank everyone who reads my books so much for everything that you've done to support me and help me. If you have any other questions, just email them to me because I can do this again for sure. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I love you guys a ton. I'm seeing all of these hearts and likes and loves, and I totally appreciate that. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this session. And if I get enough more emails and more questions, then I will do this again for sure. And we can talk more books. We can talk more about new projects that I'm going to do. We can talk about the industry. If any of you want to write books, I can totally answer questions about that. I do have a YouTube channel called Author Journey. I help a lot of authors out, try to direct them to different resources that they can use so that they can self-publish their books. Try to teach them how to do that so that they don't feel so overwhelmed like maybe it's something they couldn't accomplish because if I can do it, I'm telling you right now, if I can do this, you can so do this. I promise. There's nothing special about me. I just worked on it. It's like anything, you got to work on it. I will keep them coming, I promise. Thank you, BJ. So anyway, that is it for now because I don't see any new questions. So I will talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for being here. Mwah, much love. I appreciate it. And we'll see you guys later on. Bye-bye.